Hello and morning everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. That is all around Sophos fish threat. So we're joined here by Matthew Boddy from Sophos, who is going to be presenting the webinar today, and then also Mark Simmons, who looks after Sophos at Bytes, who will briefly talk about the relationship between Bytes and Sophos in a moment.
Thanks, Amy. Thank you for joining us this morning. I wanted to start by introducing myself before handing over to Matt. This is more just sort of to highlight the sort of relationship we have here at Bytes with Sophos. So I'm the Sophos Business Development Manager, and we are one of 4 select partners in the UK, alongside being one of a few strategic partners with Sophos. And Bytes have built a really good relationship over the last couple of years, which has continued to grow year on year. Helping customers with various different security requirements, and this is sort of the latest one that we're seeing, which is really popular in the market at the moment, hence why we are sort of educating you around this technology. So I will pass over to Matt now, and hopefully he will take you through the webinar today.
Thanks, Mark. So you should all be able to see my screen now, and just to tell you a little bit about the structure of how we're going to be running this this webinar, I'm going to go through a quick presentation on the type of threat landscape that we're facing today and how phishing has evolved, especially looking at the latest type of threat that we go through that we've been seeing of late. I then want to go into Sophos Central, which is the Sophos management products management platform for all of our products. In Sophos Central, I'll then show you Sophos Fish Threat, which is the tool in which you can use to educate your organization and try and help stop phishing attacks throughout your organization. So before I get started on all of that, I should probably introduce myself. I'm Matthew Boddy. I work for Sophos. Before working for Sophos, I worked as a penetration tester within a large organisation in the UK, the Ministry of Defence, where I used these types of techniques, which we'll be talking through in anger, against my own organisation. I then come through to Sophos, and at Sophos I liaise on a constant basis with our labs team, who show me the types of threats that they're facing every single day. And the threats that our labs team will be facing are the threats of all of our customers, because they provide a service to all of our customers where they'll see threats coming in on a daily basis. In fact, they see around 400,000 different pieces of malware every single day, which they'll analyze and dig into the depths of to find out what it is that those malicious files are up to. So we've got a very good idea here at Sophos of what the latest threats are, which is why we're here presenting to you today on what we're seeing. So I'm starting off with this presentation on how to catch a fish. Now, this is a different type of phishing attack, because the way in which I received this phishing attack was actually via WhatsApp, and I did receive this attack myself. This was something that was sent directly to me. Now, this wasn't necessarily a targeted attack. This wasn't something that was just focusing on me or trying to get into Sophos as an organization. This was just a piece of spam. But there's something very interesting about this piece of spam. Firstly, it came from a trusted contact. It came from my next door neighbor. So my next door neighbor sent me this message. I texted back saying, "Why are you sending me a spam message?" And they said that they'd legitimately sent it to me, which I found very odd. We'll get into why they did that in just a moment. But if we look at the URL within this message, now if you read the message, it says Virgin Atlantic is giving away 2 free tickets per family to celebrate the 35th anniversary. To get your free tickets, go to www.virginatlantic.com/free-tickets. What's strange about this is Virgin Atlantic, I'd expect to have put the effort in to have an HTTPS-based website. This is linking me to HTTP. Nevertheless, that could be legitimate, so that's not the deal breaker here. What's more odd is if we zoom into that R in Virgin Atlantic, we can see that there's a tiny little dot underneath it. At first, I thought this was a smudge on my screen, but actually it's not. This is not an R. This isn't the R that we're looking for. This is instead a Latin character. It's a character that looks like an R, but it's not. It's just very similar looking, which means that our malicious actor can actually register a domain with that letter in without us spotting. So now what we're going to do is we're going to play a game called we all know the game Spot the Difference. We're going to play Spot the Difference with these characters, with homoglyphs. which is what this R is. It's a homoglyph, so it's a letter that looks like the legitimate character. So on this screen in front of me, I have two characters. One is a homoglyph and one is the legitimate character. This one is a relatively easy round, but please put your messages into the question box, and what we'll do at the end is we'll see who got it right at the end of the presentation. Now, this one, hopefully you've all got your answers in. This one is actually quite clear, but the B on the left-hand side is our homoglyph. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at these M's, which is where it starts to get a little bit more tricky. Can anybody tell which one is the homoglyph and which one is the character, the actual character? I'll let you put your answers in the little chat box, in the little chat window associated with GoToMeeting. We'll give you the answer in just a second. So the answer is the homoglyph is on the left and the actual character is on the right-hand side here. If we now look at these two characters, this is exceptionally tricky. So you can see one of these is a homoglyph and one of them is the actual character. So the homoglyph in this instance is actually on the right. So as you can see, our Virgin Atlantic email was exceptionally tricky. It was using a technique that we have seen used in legitimate, not in legitimate emails, but we have seen this technique used within organizations before. This is the first time, however, that I'd seen this being sent round via WhatsApp, and so many people had fallen for it. If we take a Sophos statistic, for instance, using this tool, which we're going to discuss very shortly, out of all of the organizations which have used what's called Sophos Phish Threat, 30% of people that have been sent emails in Sophos Phish Threat have clicked on the link, meaning that 30% of people within large organizations are just falling for the attack. They're clicking on the link. Now, perhaps you and I would see this email and would spot this little dot underneath the R, but could we rely on everybody within the organization to spot that dot underneath the R? Meaning, is some malware going to get introduced into my environment because somebody has slipped up, unfortunately? Now, the other question I asked myself is, would I have spot this if it wasn't the R with the dot underneath it, but instead it was that C that we just saw on the previous page, the homoglyph that we saw on the previous page, swapped out with the C in Virgin Atlantic? Because I don't think I'd be able to spot that, at which point I would be curious. I'd probably still go into it on my test phone thinking it looks like a spam message, but I think I could be caught out by something like that. So it is getting more and more dangerous, the threat landscape for us out there. Now, another thing that I want to discuss with you is what's called Punycode. So if you do happen to fall for one of these attacks, if you do happen to fall for Virgin Atlantic with a homoglyph within it, then when you click on that link, it opens what's known as Punycode. Punycode is it's a series of ASCII characters that represent that letter, which is a homoglyph, because you can't actually register a domain with a homoglyph in. So Virgin Atlantic, for instance, as we can see here in the Punycode, has lost the R. That R is represented by the JM1G at the end of the URL. So if we take a random domain that I've made up and we convert that to Punycode, we can see that help.com with a homoglyph H becomes elp.com with a 1 SD and an XN -- before it. So if you wanted to search to see if anybody's fallen for a homoglyph-based attack, then you can search for that Punycode in your firewall logs, for instance, by searching for XN --. Now, what would happen if you were to fall for this link, this particular one? So I opened this up on a test phone. On that test phone, I then saw where it led to and took screenshots of the entire process, analyzed the web traffic coming from that device. Now, from what I saw, this web page opened at what appeared to look like a mobile version of the Virgin Atlantic website, but it wasn't. It had a remaining tickets counter that counted down from about 400 down to 0, and it kept on rapidly counting down. And then it asked for some personally identifiable information. Have you ever traveled with us? A lot of it irrelevant, but some of it actually quite personal. But then, as you can see at the bottom of this page, there was some Facebook-like mimicry to try and emulate how Facebook looks and lend legitimacy to the campaign. So they had things like messages like, "I've got mine, thanks so much Virgin Atlantic, got my tickets," and so on and so forth, making it look a little bit more legitimate. Now, this isn't the only message of this kind we're seeing going around. We've seen others emulating Carlsberg, others emulating Rolex as well. Now, just to iterate a point here, this isn't the fault of the company. This isn't the fault of Virgin Atlantic. This isn't the fault of Rolex. This is something that they don't have control over. It's a domain that's been registered that looks relatively similar to their domain but isn't their domain, and it's not Rolex actually being infected by this type of attack. So Rolex.com with the homoglyph L then converts to Punycode, as we can see. So what is it that they're looking to get out of us? They're looking to harvest personally identifiable information. They're looking to spread via Facebook and WhatsApp. So the way in which I received this message was from my next door neighbor. She sent me a WhatsApp message asking me to click on a certain link. But actually, on that web page, when you clicked on the link, when I clicked on my test device on that link, I saw that eventually it led to a WhatsApp plugin. It linked into the WhatsApp API to then ask, can you send this to all of your friends? If you send it to 10 of your friends, we'll give you the tickets. So she carried through that process, got to the point where it asked her to send it to 10 friends. She then sent it to 10 friends. Of those 10 friends, let's say 30% of them fell for it again and sent it to 10 more of those friends. That's another 30 friends, 30 people that have received this attack. So the attack spread like that. And it also spread via Facebook as well, because people were sharing the post on Facebook saying we want to receive Virgin Atlantic tickets, sharing it 10 times, sharing it with all of their friends. The other thing that they could do is I noticed that there wasn't any form of infection on the website itself, but this doesn't go to say that that couldn't be changed in the future. No web page is static, so the attacker could go into that web page, change what's happening on that web page around slightly, meaning that it starts to do some cryptojacking, it launches some ransomware on the system. It was just a relatively immature attack, this one. So with all of that in mind, I now want to introduce you to Sophos Central and the way in which you can help your organization avoid this type of attack, or all of the people within your organization avoiding these types of attack. Now, this is Sophos Central. So Sophos Central is the management platform for all or most Sophos products. As you can see, this central dashboard that I've got here displays my alerts to me. So I can see if I've detected ransomware on my endpoint protection and blocked it, if I've detected a signature-based detection or a deep learning, machine learning-based detection within my alerts here. The other things that I can do is I can jump into my email gateway and see that I've blocked a bit of spam in my environment. I've stopped some spoofing. And lastly, what I've got here is Sophos Phish Threat, which I can then go in to manage Phish Threat. So in order to get this set up in your environment, what do you have to do? Simply, to get this set up, you just need to type into your browser cloud.sophos.com or central.sophos.com and then click on sign up, at which point there's 6 boxes to fill out, and then you'll be set up with the trial. So this tool is all cloud hosted. It means you don't have to set up infrastructure within your environment. If you then want to get Sophos Phish Threat set up, you just simply need to start adding users, and you can do that by going to the People tab. So if you've only got a couple of users to add, you could just select Add New User, and you could type that user's details in. If you've got quite a few more users to add, you can use the Active Directory synchronization tool to synchronize your users across to Sophos Central as a platform. Once those users are synchronized across from your Active Directory, you'll have the email addresses in there to start sending out these phishing campaigns. So that's what Sophos Central is as a product. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through PhishThreat as a product. So PhishThreat is managed through Sophos Central as the management platform. So you don't have to pay for Sophos Central. You get Sophos Central as soon as you've got the Sophos PhishThreat licensing. So what we'll do is we'll set up a campaign to phish my organization. So if I come into this campaigns tab and I select new campaign, I can then start planning this attack on my organization. I'll say that this is a test of HR. Let's say this is the second test of HR. I can then select from 4 options. I can select to run a phishing campaign, just a generic phishing campaign, where it's going to send an email with a link in that email. If I click on that link, then that will lead me off to a web page which tries to exploit me or try and get personal information out of me. I've then got a credential harvesting campaign which I could launch. The credential harvesting campaign, what happens is it's an email that's sent to somebody. That email will then have a link within it. That link will open up a web page which will ask for a username and password. Now that username and password will not be stored, so they won't store any details at all. It will just be completely ditched straight away. But it will log that details were filled into those fields, meaning that the test has been completely failed. There's then the attachment campaign. An attachment campaign is a document or a PDF that's attached to an email that's sent to your staff, the staff in your organization. And that attachment will have macros enabled. This is a very similar to what we see happening in the real world types of attacks happening. I had one yesterday. I had to jump on a last-minute call at about 4:30, where we had somebody called us up and said, we want to buy your anti-ransomware, your ransomware protection, because we've just been hit by a massive ransomware attack. And the way in which they were hit, it started off with a Word document being sent to them. That Word document had macros. The macros ran, and the ransomware didn't actually run on the initial machine. So the ransomware was blocked by their existing antivirus provider. But because this was a targeted attack, it didn't matter that the ransomware was blocked. Because the attacker had a foothold on that machine, they stole usernames and passwords from that machine. Because they're stored in memory in plain text, there's a SAM file which has them hashed. That was stolen by the attacker. The attacker then used that username and password to jump from that machine across to the few thousand machines within that environment, including servers, including endpoints. And from all of those machines, they then relentlessly attempted to run ransomware on as many machines as they could, meaning that devices were compromised left, right, and center. And this all came from a Word document that came into the organization in the first place. So then the last thing we have here is a training campaign. The training campaign is to send out information to your staff, to tell them how to look out for these types of attacks, what attacks do, and what types of attacks are common at this moment in time. So we'll go through each of these individually. We'll go through one of these. We've kind of got an idea of how these work, but we'll go through one of these and I'll show you what the training campaigns look like in the process. So let's set up a phishing campaign. I'm going to click next here. So now I get to choose my attack. Now, one of the huge benefits of going with Sophos is that we actually we have an anti-spam solution in Sophos Central. In this anti-spam solution, we receive tons of spam. We get them all collated in one place from all of our customers that receive spam and we block. And also we have spam traps out there in data centers all across the world looking to receive spam from old abandoned email addresses. And from that, we're able to just go into those inboxes that we have waiting with loads of spam and just copy and paste the spam into Sophos Central. So all of these attacks that I have available to me with a little new banner have been added within the past week or so, and that's because we've got access to so many different spam emails. It's quite overwhelming the amount the amount of attacks you've got available to you through this. So it's not like you'll do an attack one day and then you'll come back to this in a month's time and think, oh, I don't really know what attacks to choose. You've got this plethora of attacks that you can launch from here. So let's select one of these to send out. Now the difficulty for me is because we're constantly adding new attacks to this. I don't have a consistent attack that I go to because they're all constantly changing. I'll select this Apple Store receipt. So this is actually showing in dollars, and I don't like that this is showing in dollars. I want to send this out to my UK-based company, so I'm going to change that. So I'm going to select this attack anyway, and I'm going to click next. Now I've got the choice to automatically enroll all of my users in a training campaign if they fall for this attack. So if they fall for the attack, do I want to show them training straight away? Now you've got two choices here. You can not show them training, which means that if they fall for the attack, it will show an error 404, page not found, so that hopefully they don't have that much suspicion, they exit out of the page and they carry on with their daily life. At which point, if you want to target them with the training campaign after they've fallen for it, you can then send that out separately, so that they don't. The main aim of this is so that they don't spin around in their chair, speak to the person next to them and say, hey, don't click on that email because it's a phishing attack, which would then completely skew your results. So for the purposes of this, however, I do want to select a training campaign. We've got quite a lot of training that's available. None of them tend to be more than about 10 minutes, most of them around the sort of 5 minutes mark. So I can select things like, let's select, what should I go for? Let's select credential harvesting here. So the credential harvesting campaign is an interactive training campaign where it's telling you the basics of what to look out for in a phishing email. It's a really good one to get started on with your organization. So it'll say to you, what's wrong about this email address? Is it spelled correctly? Absolutely no, it's not. And then it's saying, what about, is there any suspicious language used in this? Is it trying to get me to do things urgently? And is it all spelt correctly? Yes, it looks suspicious, so I can carry on from there. We've also got these, so we've teamed up with Ninjadu, I think it's called, and that's a huge, quite advanced training and kind of awareness tool that you can purchase in its own right. And we've teamed up with them to be able to get a lot of their training content embedded within here. So I can learn about cryptojacking, why it's bad for my organization. I can learn about how your account can be taken over even if you've got two-factor authentication enabled. I can learn about what a bad password is with that. So it kind of takes it that step further. Although we've definitely got the basics in here to teach people about GDPR compliance and how you should store data as well. So this is all really handy stuff. So let's choose this training campaign that I was going to choose and go into the next step. This is where I get to edit the entire everything about the email. So at this point, I can go in, I can select edit, and I can change this from dollars to pounds if I want to. So let's change everything in here to make this more applicable to the UK. Now, don't get me wrong, there are very UK-centric emails within here. We are a British company, and we pride ourselves in that, meaning that the majority of this is focused towards the UK. However, I need to change the formatting on them. I won't bother for now. We can do that all within here if I want to. We are a UK-based company, and we've got a huge customer base in the UK. We started in the UK in 1985 from some Oxford graduates that decided to start looking at how they could create encryption tools. They then diversified and went into antivirus, and it all spurred on what is now today's Sophos. So we've got so we do have English-based or British-based training campaigns. However, if I did choose an American-centric one, I have the ability to very easily change this campaign to make it look more realistic to my market. And that also means if you're sending an email around saying somebody's left their headlights on in the parking lot, please click on this link to see if the car is the image looks like your car. you can absolutely change the building manager that email address, that email is coming from, to the actual name of your building manager, which of course would be information available to an attacker on LinkedIn. Now, the email that I'm sending from orders@ereceipt.co. We've got loads of domains which we've purchased, things like Google Mail with a 1, helpdesktech.com, that all will pick the relevant one depending on what campaign you go for. You can leave this blank if you want to. You can leave this be with the standard phishing attack that's already in there, or you can customize this to your heart's content. So if you want to change the training campaign to have your logo on it, or the reminder emails for training campaigns to have your logo on it, you can change all of that. If you want to change the text within "this wasn't a real attack" to say this is your name from the IT team, please don't worry about this, you can do that. So it's all customizable. So at this point, I want to send this campaign out so I can enroll my users on this. So let's select Jade, which is my test account, Jade Matthews, and I'll move Jade across to the right-hand side, and I can click next. Now, this is all manageable by group as well. I've selected a user here, but I can push these users into groups. I can make an HR group if I wanted to. Jade is a member of HR, so of course I could add that. HR's there. Or I could add finance or any Active Directory security group if I wanted to, and that means anybody in that Active Directory security group would receive this email. So now I'm at the point where I want to schedule this attack in. So I'm going to launch this immediately. I'm going to launch it straight away, and all at the same time. I can go back at this stage. This is a summary. I can go back and change everything within here. There's a pass mark within my training campaign. So if they get over 80%, then they've passed. I can change that if I want to. I can change anything within here at this point as well. So this is going to send out to Jade Matthews, or my alias as Tinkerbell42, the answer to the meaning of life and everything. So let's click done here, and this email is now going to start sending out to those users. Now let's go into one that I sent to myself yesterday, because it will take a few minutes for that email to be received by Direct Jade. But just in preparation for this, I sent myself an email yesterday, which was relatively similar. I just picked an attack at random. Oh, we've got that email already, but let's look at this one first. So this particular attack, I can see that this is telling me that I have got a salary increase of 12.64%. So do you want to access your confidential documents? And I'm going to absolutely fall for this hook, line, and sinker. Let's click on this this phishing link, and this is telling me now that this wasn't a real attack, but it could have been. Let's go and do this training. So this will tell me, this course will tell me about bad passwords. This is one of the more advanced courses that where we've teamed up with this third party, Ninjadu, I think they're called, and this then goes on to talk about actually an organization, a real breach that happened to an organization because somebody didn't have a good password set, and it caused the organization McBurger Company or something along those lines. Although just before it starts, it talks to you about how this is nothing to do with any other burger organization whatsoever. But yeah, so once you've gone through this training, once you've learned how a bad password can be set and how to avoid it, then that will be logged by Sophos Central, by your Phish Threat tool. So if I go into the HR test that this was, my result will show me that that Jade Matthews has indeed received the email, opened the email, clicked on the link, and started the training, but I've not finished the training. So you've got visibility of what stage that you're at. If we now look at the HR test 2 that we set up just 1 second ago, we'll be able to see this does take, we run these statistics on intervals, so it won't know that I've received the email just yet. So that will be understood shortly. But if we click into the results, you can actually see when this email was sent a bit more accurately. So we do know that Jade Matthews has received this email at this point. So if I was to click into this, I can see exactly what's happened here. In fact, the formatting doesn't even look that bad, which I could have edited a bit further. But it's got my information, like my Apple ID, based on the email address this has been sent to, who it's been billed to, card on file to make it, to lend to its legitimacy. And of course, I don't want to spend 84.66 on Clash of Clans, so I can click on report a problem all the way down this page, and if I do, then instantly Jade Matthews is caught out once again, and they have to complete the credential harvesting training campaign. So this is how PhishThreat works. This is how it can improve your organization's stance towards phishing, how it can make everybody a little bit more cyber aware within your organization. So I hope this has helped you in understanding the tool that we wanted to talk to you about. So if you've got any questions, I'd like to open the floor for them now. But just as a summary of what we've gone over, we started off talking about the types of threats that we're facing in today's world. Then we've gone into Sophos Central. So I've described to you how Sophos Central works and what it does, how it can manage all of your different tools that you purchase from Sophos to help your security posture within your organization. Then we've gone directly into PhishThreat and discussed how PhishThreat can make everybody cyber aware within your organization through sending out phishing emails. So I hope that's been helpful for you all. Any questions?
Brilliant, thanks Matthew. Okay, as mentioned at the beginning, if you do have any questions, there's a questions panel just at the right hand side of your screen. Just pop them in there, I will read those out shortly. So I'll just wait to see if any come through. So one has come through from Mark that says, how is PhishThreat licensed?
Sorry,
I'll jump in here.
Are you going to jump in?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So PhishThreat is licensed per user. So typically, if there is an sort of your organisation, look to, depending on how many users you are looking to run this campaign over, sort of we take that. It doesn't have to be your full user count. However, when we're talking sort of like business wide, then we recommend obviously being the full user count within the organisation, but it is per user license.
Brilliant, thank you, Mark. Okay, another question here. There are a few others that do similar technologies. Why Sophos?
It's a good question. So we can provide you with protection pre and post attack, and it helps in having one solution for all of these areas. If you're just purchasing a phishing tool on its own, it's likely that that's going to set alone for a while whilst you're not configuring or playing with it. The other key benefit we've got here at Sophos is we're not just providing you with phishing training, we also can provide companies with an email gateway to protect you from spam. Now, whether you purchase that or not is kind of irrelevant to the point that I'm trying to make here, in that PhishThreat can draw upon all of that spam that we receive on a daily basis. We're seeing real attacks, and we can provide you with those real attacks, whether they're targeted or whether they are just generic spam that is going to organizations throughout the UK and throughout the world, and that people are likely to fall for on a daily basis, and you can be the one sending that to your users. Now, no matter how mean that makes you feel, I think if I was once again in charge of IT infrastructure within an organization, I'd feel a lot more at peace if I was the one that was sending out the spam in the organization. If it was me sending it out and them falling for it, but me knowing which areas of which department are likely to fall for that, as opposed to a bad guy sending that out and my organization being a victim of a breach. I hope that answers the question.
Brilliant, thanks Matthew.
Thank you.
Okay, just wait another minute to see if any questions come through. Also on the screen there, we do have an email if you would like to submit any questions outside of the webinar today.
don't think there's any more questions. So one last thing from myself before we wrap up, just to sort of like a quick guide as to how to prevent and stop phishing in 3 simple steps. Number 1 is train your users on how to spot and avoid phishing attacks. Something like Sophos Phish Threat, we're obviously going to do that as the aim of today. Number 2, stop phishing threats at a gateway. That's pre-delivery. And then the final thing is secure your last line of defense on your endpoint. So something that is going to sit on the endpoints as last line of defense, making sure that if any of those users do click on any of these sort of attacks that aren't being spoofed from your internal IT, then there is a last line of defense on your endpoints that are going to prevent that. If you want to have any more information, by all means, reach out to us in the feedback form, and we'll be able to get back to you on the information required.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks for Bytes for setting this all up today. It's very much appreciated.
You're welcome, and thank you, Matthew, for presenting, and thank you everyone for taking the time out of your busy days to join the webinar today. So as mentioned at the beginning, I will be sending you all a link to the recording. I'll most probably send that out this afternoon. Okay, so yeah, as mentioned again, there is a 3-question feedback form at the end, so if you would like any information, just please pop that in there and we will get back to you. Okay, so thank you everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.